So this is today's agenda. So we're going to cover only one topic, but it's a very important topic for us and as part of the Absalon development. So we'll continue. We'll start this microarchitecture and we'll discuss something in deep, like how exactly we can leverage this architecture in our development uh, time, and what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, and why we should go for micro architecture. Uh, all these things we'll discuss as part of today's agenda. So before we start, let me have a quick recap on what we have discussed last 2 days uh, as part of the training. We'll have a quick recap, and as we have only one topic to cover today, so we'll have some more time for the QA session. And if you have any questions which are unanswered yesterday, or if you you'll get any questions regarding to today's topic, then we can cover some more questions today. Okay. So in these last 2 days, we briefly covered how to use Absalon development platform to develop omni-channel applications. So basically, if I have to brief the Absalon ID, the MADP. So Absalon is a mobile application development platform where you can build omni-channel solutions by using hybrid technologies. When I said omni-channel, you can code once in one of these common technologies which are supported across all the platform, such as HTML5, JavaScript, CSS, and you can use that application in multiple platforms at once. So you don't need separate code base for that. So it's a hybrid application development platform. And we have seen how to configure the Absalon ID as part of the first day. And we covered some basic topics like creating the screens, attaching a script file, and how to navigate from screen to screen. And we have used some basic APIs and some few Absalon APIs to facilitate those functionalities like navigation functionalities and fetching data from your local JSON file. Then we moved to the second part of it, which is communicating to the underlying services. So when I said services, there can be many types of services, but the major services that we consume as part of any banking application, as we are mainly focused on the banking applications, we talk about the banking applications more here. So in the banking application development, we may majorly consume on two type of services. One is the database type service, and one is this service. SOAP is also being used frequently. So we covered yesterday. We covered day before yesterday. We covered the first part of the session, which is the database connectivity. How to how to integrate your local database or a remote database by using an Absalon ID directly. So in any other platform, any mobile application development platform, be it native or hybrid, none of this platform provides a direct communication to your backend database. So you have to go through a service layer, the middleware, where the database data have been exposed by a REST service or SOAP service or any kind of services. But Absalon ID facilitates that feature to communicate directly to the underlying database. Not only communication, you can use your table structure, table format to generate the interface and the screens. Also, we have seen. So we kind of automate the entire process, and the same thing goes for the REST API connection as well. So we not only consume on the underlying database, we also have seen that if any core banking, if any bank doesn't provide its core banking services and they have a legacy system and where they have database services, but they don't have any REST services, using this Absalon server layer, you can actually expose that data in a REST client, to the REST layer, and you can distribute that share that endpoint to others if someone wants to use it. So we facilitate the feature to enable the REST out of the database service directly. So you don't have to build the REST, the middleware part, the service layer part separately. So that is one additional feature that we discussed yesterday. We also have seen that we facilitate one of those interface where you can directly write the queries as well. But the limitation to that interface is that you cannot perform the CRUD operation. Only the query operation can be performed using that type of interface. But database type service facilitate a lot more features, and almost all the features, if you're like the creating or fetching the data or inserting a record or deleting a record, all these operations you can perform using database type service. So after completing that part, then we move to the REST part, where we have seen how to consume HTTP or HTTP service. And we have seen how to automate the screen as well. Means how to automate the screen design using the service definition. So we don't have to manually generate the screen, which might take some time based on the service definition. If your service definition is a little complicated, then creating an interface structure and screen design might take a little more time than we expect. So we can automate the entire process and cut down our development time in there. So one important aspect we have learned that if you are going through the Agilent service layer, if you're going through the Agilent architecture by communicating to the underlying database or underlying services, then you have to go through an interface. So the interface is a layer where you can through which you can communicate to the underlying services, and that has to go to the Agilent server. So we have facilitated all those security features, the default security features like data integrity check, basic encryption, decryption, all those things we have been taken care of as part of this Agilent server layer. So we communicate through the Agilent server layer to make your transaction secure, and we restrict we limit the part where we don't show or expose the payload to our end users in our end application. So these are the basic security measures we have been taken care of, and of course this is like 100% configurable. You can configure later as per your need if you want to add some additional security features as per your application development. Then in the second part, at the last part of the yesterday's session, we covered how to mock a service. Means if you are working with some services and as part of development phase, the services are not available, or you want to test your application without hitting the service, because hitting a service might increase the payload time and might delay your testing process, and it might affect the if you are continuously hitting the backend services, it might affect the service as well, might end up crashing it. So for the testing purpose, to avoid this kind of scenarios, we are mocking the service. It means we are putting some offline sample data, a mock data file in our application, and if your application is offline, then it will take that mock data, and you can go through the entire simulation process, and you can finish the development, even if your service is not there, your actual service is not available to you. So here you can remove the dependencies from the service while development as well. Then we have completed a server extensibility part in brief in the last session. So server extensibility feature enables you to extend your functionality development or your integration aspect to it to the Java layer. So in some case, if you are not feel secure, if you're not feeling secure to implement your business logic validations or any kind of uh, transaction related operations in JavaScript layer, you can definitely move those logic part into the Java part, in the Java layer, which is a secure layer for you. And we have seen how to communicate from the JavaScript layer to Java layer through this Agile server extensibility class, and how to communicate back from Java layer to the JavaScript layer. So these are the basic, so these are the topics that we have covered in last 2 days. So if you have taken any questions that we didn't answer, we can address these questions now before we move forward to today's session. Any questions that you had yesterday that because the time limit we couldn't address, uh, you can feel free to shoot today.
Yeah, one question. The UI, is it extensible kind of thing? For example, we are building an UI, and can the customer on the site, we can like customize that UI. Is it possible? As in that extensibility is possible with Abjala?
What do you mean by customer? In the sense, you are developing the page, right? Means developing your screens. So
For
when you
example,
want to customize, exactly.
okay, see for example, in Finacle, in the business world, what happens is we deliver a screen, okay, and at the customer side, the customer customizes the screen by adding one or two fields specific to the bank, which we do not deliver as part of the base product. Okay, that is one scenario. Second scenario we have is like we have a base product and we have the localized screens.
Okay.
For example, consider the postal code. Okay, in India we have a postal code which is of 6 characters, 6 digits. But in US we have postal code plus sub postal code. Okay, what we do is like we build a base product. On top of that, we localize the screen to add the additional fields for that actually.
Okay.
For example, if tomorrow there is a need, like in the UK local, we need one more functionality. So we develop that on top of the base product. So is it that? So that is kind of an extensibility. We say like additional functionality. So is it possible with Abjalan?
Yeah, definitely. So this is again the part of your development phase. So how you want to develop the application. So if you want to support the multiple local here, means based on your local, you want to switch the screens. In a sense, you might have a different functionality for one local and you have a different functionality for another local. Then you can definitely handle those things as part of the development process. So extend means if you have already deployed one version of your application and you want to modify that application, that build means if you want to add few more screen to it or you want to add some filter on the screen rendering part, then you need to release another build. At the runtime, you cannot inject. At the runtime, you cannot manipulate the HTML.
So that inject is by touching the base product code, or like it is another without touching. I mean, because see, when we are delivering some code to the customer, I don't want them to touch that code actually.
So what I'm saying, so today we cover this micro architecture, right? So this will address your question.
Okay.
So how the modularity will come to the picture. So how you don't affect the other code and only one part of your development code if you have to just touch.
So this
and
modularity is also applicable to the UI code also. That is what you meant to say.
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
So we'll discuss that in brief. The micro architecture that we're going to discuss, that we'll discuss.
Okay.
Hi, Agnya, Aditya this side. Just have a small question. We have sometimes there is a scenario that we need to release an update, and that update should not be user avoidable. I mean, there is some vulnerability in our code that might lead to a fraud. So we have to release a patch for that, and we need to give an over-the-air update. So is there any scope for that in Absalon as well?
We provide OTA updates. Bharat, you want to address this question? Apart from normal OTA.
So your question is like once the application is released and if you want to patch the customers, like how do you actually do it over?
Right. I want to give over the update using a CDN or maybe my own server.
Okay.
But I'm not going through the Play Store and App Store and asking the user to install. I wanted to install, or the very least, the user should not be able to at least log into the app and make any transaction that might result in a fraud or maybe a faulty transaction, which would increase the bank's overhead. So at least bare minimum that the user should be redirected after the login, that please update the app, and he should not be able to do any transactions or anything. And so best would be that the user should be able to update without going to the Play Store or App Store, and using a content delivery server, we can just deliver the updates directly without going to Play Store or App Store.
Right. So this feature, the over there update feature is available. So how this works is like, let's say the first time you actually build your application and give it to the customers via the Play Store. So now there is a small functional fix or some functional additions that needs to be given to the customers. So only the patch specific files and stuff like that needs to be updated into the delivery servers, which is also part of the not part of the admin module right now, but it's a standalone OTA service that is available. So next time when the user actually logs in, based on the version that he is and based on the patch that is available, it will check the server and ask him to update it, telling that an update is available. And based on that, he can go ahead and update that one. So that feature is available.
So that would happen via the Play Store and App Store, or it will be delivered
No.
by our server?
Yes, this is delivered outside of the Play Store. This is not going through the Play Store.
Okay. And this will contain only the HTML, CSS, JavaScript changes, or will it contain also the native changes?
No, not no. Okay, this is a good question. So if there is a native change, then we have to release it as part of the Play Store itself, because that will become part of the container release. If it is anything to do with the application related changes, then those things can be patched as part of the OTA update.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, Yagnan, not right now.
Okay, then we will move on to today's agenda. Okay. So today's agenda is micro architecture. So we have discussed a little about micro architecture on the first day of introduction, like what is this architecture now. So that the details we'll discuss today and how to leverage this architecture in our development. So before we start and integrating or start developing the micro apps, I just want to give a little overview on why we want the micro architecture and how it is different from the other architecture that we follow to develop mobile apps now in the market. So nowadays, that doesn't matter if it is a native application or hybrid application development platform, we follow a particular way. So we call it as a monolithic approach of development because we have been following this approach since a long time. So what is this approach? When I said approach, development approach, when you work on a particular project, that time you might be using only one project. In the sense, if you are developing an application for let's say for HDFC Bank, then you're going to build one application. The application will be just HDFC or something. Then you continue developing your module and your functionality inside that project. So it's a single source code, single project for single application. This is how we follow even till date. If you go to the native application development, we follow the same approach. And some of those hybrid applications also we follow the same approach. Though some hybrid frameworks they facilitate some of those little bit of modularity on the formatting of that to make it reusable, but it is not that tightly coupled. I think. Let me mute everyone. I think someone is unmuted. Sorry. So in micro architecture, we believe in a loosely coupled architecture. So what I mean by loosely coupled is that when we start developing, when we start working on a project, let's say we have a few modules. We have 5 to 6 modules. For an example, login as a module, or a dashboard as a module, or a fund transfer as a module, or service request as a module. So those are the basic modules, very common modules across any retail banking application. So if I consider these sections as a separate module, so we can build all these modules as an individual micro app. So those module development are independent to each other. So we keep it independent. So those different models can be developed and can be deployed independently as well. So we keep the modularity in place, in the sense we divide the entire the ask, I mean, so the entire the requirement. I mean, if you the first page of your development, we can decide what are the modules as part of this project can be reused later. So what are the common modules that I can take it out and can use it later in on other project. Like I said, the fund transfer and login module are quite common module across any retail banking application. There might be the services that I'm going to consume for the core banking services that I'm going to consume for the HDFC Bank might be different from the ICICI Bank, but the screen design or few functionalities like 50 to 60% of the code remains the same because it's the same model. So we develop those models and independently, and we integrate those models at the runtime during the build time. So it is light, it is very light coupled. So the development is totally independent after from model to model. So this is called modularity. And also the reusability factor comes into the picture. So when you're independently developing one module, you can also reuse it later for other projects. You don't have to separately code for the same functionalities again you have already developed. Okay. Then one more point, one more major aspect to this micro architecture is distributed development. So if you are working with a large team, in the sense, if you're working with a team of 10 people for a single project. So if you are working in a single source code, then it is very difficult. It gets very difficult for the person who is going to integrate the code from different developers, because in the end it's a whole project. And if you have to release the product, then you have to integrate all the modules. And it's not that you can build one module and can delete it, and you can build another module and can delete it later. So you have to integrate all the source code from the different developers, and you have to build the solution as a whole in the end. So if it is single source code, then the managing the source code, means the integration aspect of it gets little difficult. Though we can use SBN or Git, the source control management tool. Though that by using that also, while using that those tools as well, it gets little complicated when the two developers are working in the same file. In that case, it will definitely give a conflict, and you have to manually sit and merge or resolve the conflict. There is no other way, even if you are using the Git. So it will. So this is not a small problem. This is a major problem when it comes to the integration, because it might take days because it's a single source code, and you never find out if sometimes it's very difficult to find out what are you missing, because if you have if a huge code base structure, then it gets very difficult for you to understand. Yeah, I am not sharing anything right now. I'm just giving a brief about the micro architecture module. So we'll just go to the development in some time. So these are the main factors, the major problems that we address by, while using the micro architecture. Now let's start with the development, and I'll show you how to create a micro and how to integrate this micro different microbes into a single base solution and create an application as a whole. So let me open the application that we have developed in last 2 days. So here we developed one sample application called training, and we have included 2 to 3 modules to it. One is the login module, login functionality. Then on click of login, we are going to this profile screen. And we also have one more screen where we are displaying the list of employees in the day service, right? So if you see here, here I can divide this. So here I am creating different screen inside the same project for the different models. So if I consider login as a model, so I can definitely consider login as a model, because the screen design, the design of this login page, or the script, the functionality that I am going to write for this login basically on click of the login button, or what is the common validation for the username and password. I mean the password field should not contain any special characters, and the username should not contain any numbers, something like that. So if you have some of those common functionalities in place as part of my development, then I can definitely consider login as a module. Similarly, profile can be a module. And when you come to the banking application, like I said, bank fund transfer can be a module. Service request can be a module. So like that. So I can identify what are the common, what are the modules that I can reuse later, what I can build as a separate module altogether. So here, right now, we are following the monolithic approach of the development. We are creating the modules as a screen inside the project, and we are creating the scripts attached to that particular screen, and we are continuing the development. We are finishing the development, and we are navigating from screen to screen for our navigation by using launch screen API, and we are finishing the flow, right? Now we'll see how to uh, integrate micro architecture to this application. Means we will integrate the micro architecture, and we will achieve the same thing that we have done now, and we'll see the difference. So we'll see what is the difference and what advantages it gives while integrating the micro architecture. So let me the first page of your development, you need to identify what are the common models. Like I said, then we're going to develop those models as a micro app. So let me take this login as a micro app as a different independent model. So when you create a micro app, to create a micro app, go to files, click on new. The same way that we are creating a project. So micro app is nothing but a Abdullah project. In the first day, I asked you to omit this section. So here, if you want to create any project as a micro app, they need to select this checkbox. That's all. There's nothing more to it. So by enabling this checkbox, you will make this application as a micro app. If you don't enable this checkbox, we call it as a base app. So for each project, you'll have only one base app, and you can have multiple micro apps. You cannot have multiple base apps for a single project, for a single solution, because there should be a front-facing project. Front-facing app means which can be considered as gateway. So the base app is considered as the gateway for the entire application. It will represent the application, and we are going to integrate the micro apps to the base app always. Okay. So let me start with I'll develop the same thing using the micro app architecture. So when you start with a micro app architecture development, first you need to create a base app for your project. So to create a base app, let's create a new base. Select the folder. So when you're creating a base app, don't check this checkbox. So it will create a project for you the way we're creating a project. Then you can change those basic configurations. So, then in the base app, go to the screen section. Let me rename this to base. Add a layout. So normally in the base app, you don't develop any functionality related design or scripts. So in the base app, you don't contain any design. So in the base app, you'll just drag and drop an empty row, which will consider as a launcher. So inside this base app, I'm going to launch all my micro apps. So this is kind of my launcher div. So you'll just drag and drop an empty row, which will create a basic UI structure in your application for your application. It will do a basic import of all the libraries when you run this base app without adding any micro apps. Now in the runtime, I'm going to launch those micro apps inside the base app by using one of our Abdullah APIs. So in the base app, I don't have any design related to my project requirement. So I just have a simple empty row in place. Then you provide this innermost container. You can provide the ID as it's a launcher div. Because I'm going to launch all my micro apps, all my model inside my base app. Then I'll have a script. standard script. So this is it. Now this is my base app. Now I'm going to create login as a micro app, because login I want to be a separate module so that I can reuse later. So when you create a micro app for a particular project, you need to create a separate folder called micro app repository. Means you need to create all the micro apps inside the inside one folder itself, so that we can identify what are the micro apps we are going to use for this particular project. So I'll create one parent folder called micro apps. Okay. And while creating, I'll select this checkbox, micro app checkbox. Now, if you see, the project structure and everything is same. So you don't find any difference in the project structure between the base app and the micro app. The project structure, the properties that we're going to define for the base app and micro app, both are the same. So how do you identify which one is the base app and which one is the micro app? So if you go to the project properties in the base app, you will see all these properties. Now I open the micro app project properties. Here you will find one external flag called micro app type. Okay. So this is how we will identify whether this is a micro app. For the base app, this flag will be absent. For the micro app, you'll find this flag called micro app type. Now in the micro app type, we have three types: internal, external, and navigator. So this is respective to our development approach. So there is no change in functionality if you select one of these. Means whatever you can achieve by internal type micro app, you can definitely achieve this all of these features by using this external type micro app. There is no restriction to it. Means we don't restrict some functionality, or we don't add any additional features if you're selecting one of these flags. This is mostly for the development from the development perspective. So we keep, so what is the internal? Basically, what is the concept behind it? So when you keep the internal microtype as internal, internal microtype is like the default micro app type. Means which contains both screen as well as your functionality to it. Okay. In the external micro app, sometimes what happens, you might need some underlying modules where you don't need to have a screen. Okay. For an example, if you're doing a fund transfer, okay. So fund transfer, I have a micro app called fund transfer where I have a screen, like where you capture all this from account to account, then amount, then all this things from the user input. Then on click of submit, when you click on transfer, then before you launch the last section, the success screen, okay. Before you launch the success screen, you are going to call a few core banking services for some APIs, core banking service APIs. Means maybe 3 to 4 APIs you're going to call, and after the call, if it is success, then you're going to launch the second page. So you can develop the fund transfer micro app as an internal type micro app, like a default type micro app, which will contain those two screens, the first screen and the last screen. And for this in between, what are the operations you're going to perform, like specific to a client. Let's say I'm developing this application, this retail banking application for HDFC. So the core banking services for the HDFC will definitely be different from the ICICI. So what I can do, I can create one more micro app, let's call fund transfer service integration or internal service internal HDFC something. So here I don't need a screen. Basically, I'm not going to capture any data from my user. There is no user input. So whatever data I have captured as part of the first screen, I just need to pass this data to the second to the second micro app, and I can call those 3 to 4 APIs, because each API depends on the response of the previous APIs. If you take that example, so I can handle all these API calls without capturing any data from my user again. Okay. So in that case, you can have this external type micro app where you don't need a screen. You just need to have a script and some business logic validation, whatever it is. Then once the transaction is successful, you go to the second screen of the first micro app. So like that, you can separate the core banking service integration and your common modules. Means when developing this fund transfer as a module, you can separate it out. Okay, this is my core banking for the core banking services for my HDFC, and this is my screen part of it. So for a different client who never integrate, so one of the major reason why we are following this micro architecture is reusability. So if you have to reuse this this font transfer micro, you just need to take this first micro, which contains a scheme, some UI level validation, or some common functionality, and you don't take the font transfer internal external micro, which is going to which has those core banking service integration for the HDFC. So you take this only first micro and integrate, and you can have a separate micro for the ICICI Bank for the core banking service integration. So like that, you can define the type of micro apps during development. The navigator type micro app, basically we create navigator type micro app to have a navigator in place. For an example, if you're having a menu, a hamburger menu, where you have this list of menus, and on click of each menu you are navigating to different micro sections. So you have to keep to identify, okay, this is the micro app which acts like a navigator for me, and from where I can go to different I can launch different micro apps at the runtime. So it is purely based on the development approach, how you are doing it. For that reason, we have kept this flag. There is no other reason behind it. So we can definitely design a screen in all type of micro. We can definitely design a screen. We can add all the functionalities in internal type, external type, or navigator. This is from the developer's perspective, just to identify what is the functionality behind it and how do you are following it. So you need to, if you are following this internal, external, and navigator strictly, then you need to follow strictly this standard across all your project development. Okay. So this is how you will identify what is the if your project is a micro, if app is a micro or a base app. Other properties of this project remain same. So we're going to develop the screen and script in an exactly similar fashion, the way we have developed application, the base and the first application in the last 2 days. So we're going to follow the exact same process. There is no difference to it.